Hello and welcome to the 15-minute show, part of the Arsenal Therapy podcast. I'm your host, Adam Keys, and today we're going to run through some of the news stories for the new year. I know it's all doom and gloom around Arsenal right now after two back-to-back defeats. It's obviously a horrible way to welcome in the new year, which was compounded last night by Liverpool beating Newcastle 4-2 in what was an absolute hammering. It was the biggest XG win since records began. And obviously, they put 4 goals past a pretty hapless Newcastle, who are completely decimated by injuries right now. But it was one of those, whenever you're relying on someone else to do you a favour, it's never a good thing. The reality is we have messed up massively in the last couple of weeks. And I think every Arsenal player and fan knows exactly what we need to do now. There is so much negativity around the fan base right now that it's almost hard to go on Twitter and look at kind of any Arsenal news without being kind of overcome by just pure emotion and pure overreaction. Because the reality is, everyone's form is hitting peaks and troughs this season. No one has really put together a sustained run of form. Everyone's having 3 or 4 or 5 good games and then a loss, a draw, and that's happening over and over again. Injuries are playing a major part. We're seeing a lot of people reportedly playing through them, and then as someone returns, that player drops out very quickly. But we've got the AFCON coming up, we've got the Asia Cup, and we've got the FA Cup next week in England, and we've pretty much a 3-week break now until the Premier League returns for Arsenal. So let's take a minute to run through some of the news stories that we're seeing over today and yesterday, and have a little discussion on those. So first up, the news is that Tomiyasu is very, very close to agreeing a new contract at Arsenal. With that, this is coming with an extension and a salary rise. Now, it's one of those. Tomiyasu has had very good spells this season. He's had very good spells in his first season. Last year, he was largely inconsistent, followed by a large injury layoff. This year, he's worked his way back into the team on merit. He's got his head down. He's worked really hard. And then in December, he fell to injury. That injury had a pretty heavy effect on Arsenal, if we're going to be honest. And it's one of those that I think, had he have been fit, he definitely would have played at Anfield. He most likely would have played against West Ham. And it's another example of a player that Arsenal have who can't stay fit. And it's always one of those, it's a funny criticism now, given how many players we have that are so reliable and stay fit every week. So the likes of Saliba, Gabriel, your Declan Rice, Havertz, Saka, Martinelli, those kind of players that are just largely relied upon, Martin Odegaard as well. So the question with this is this a good move for Arsenal? I think everyone rates Tomiyasu, everyone knows he's a very, very good player, and he's got 18 months left on his current deal. However, Arsenal do have the option to extend for a further 12 months, taking that deal on to 2025. Or 2026, sorry. So he still has over 2 years left on his deal should Arsenal take up that option. Now, the question is, given his injury history and on how difficult it's been to rely on Tomiyasu, is giving him a salary rise and an extension really a good use of funds at this time? To me, a month ago, whenever he had fought his way back in and he looked really fit, really healthy, and in some of the best football and shape he had done for a long, long time, I was absolutely behind this. Now I do question that, because I think we have other players in this squad. We've got Zinchenko, who's similarly injury prone, and Thomas Partey is another. With these kinds of players, it becomes very difficult to build around them and rely upon them. So the question does have to be asked, is this a good use of funds? To me, given the latest injury, I would probably have held off giving him this new contract, because whilst we may want to secure his future, it's difficult to make an argument that Tomiyasu really deserves a pay rise at this point, because if we're going to be completely brutally honest, it's hard to really point to what improvements he's made since he's come into Arsenal. He came in as a very good player. He had a very good first season, and he's kind of back to that first season's form. He hasn't significantly progressed since then. He doesn't own his own spot in the team, and he is looking better at left back. Look, Tomiyasu's a pure versatile defender, So he's the kind of squad player that you want in a title-winning top team. I compare him to the likes of Fergie's great squad players, your Park Ji-sung's, John O'Shea's, um, Phil Neville's, those kind of players that come in, don't drop the level of the team, can play in multiple positions and get what the team is trying to do. But right now, I think Tomiyasu just needs to prove a bit more. And the biggest kind of statement he needs to make is that he can stay fit for longer than 6 or 8 weeks. So for me, this one is one I'm not disappointed with, but I do wonder if the club would have been better holding off a little longer before giving this. But to stick with the news of Tomiyasu, he has been selected for the Japan squad for the Asia Cup. He will be off in the next week or so, and so we are going to lose him for a few weeks. And with Japan, there is a high likelihood that they will go far in the competition. They could even possibly win it. They have got a good side. So after losing Tomiyasu for a month with injury, we are now going to see him off at the Asia Cup, and he is going to miss a significant amount of time for Arsenal. So in total, we're going to lose this player for around 2 months, given that he's been out for so long. But on to, I guess, somewhat mixed news, because we don't actually know what this means. Thomas Partey has been left out of the Ghana squad for the AFCON. Now, this is one that a lot of people will look at and think, great news, Thomas Partey's out of the Ghana squad. He's not going to the AFCON. He's going to be available for Arsenal. However, the reports are, Chris Houghton has said that this is the biggest injury he's had. It's the worst injury of his career. Arsenal are treating this with caution, and so will the player. But one of the key things he said is he will not meet our timelines for the AFCON. Ghana's first game is on the 14th of January. Their second game is on the 18th, and their third game is on the 22nd. So a fit Thomas Partey would be required to play 3 games in just over a week, having not played any football since the 8th of October for Arsenal. In that time, he has not trained with the squad, and that's something I think a lot of people don't necessarily get their heads around when they see a player on the training pitch. Quite often, those players are training separately to the squad. It's only when they're in amongst the group with the ball, playing with contact training, that full training really begins. So there is a period of recovery. A lot of it's done in the gym with physios. Then it'll be stepped up to kind of running on the grass, followed by some light exercises with the ball in a small group, sometimes just with a physio, sometimes with others that are recovering from injury. And then once that's really stepped up and they're ready to return to full training, that's when we'll start seeing them back. And with someone who's been out for 3 months, there's a likelihood that they're going to train for maybe 2 weeks with the full group before we actually see them on the pitch. And with an injury like this, Arsenal aren't going to rush Thomas Partey back. That will take time. So it's one of those, I would be cautious about putting a date on it, but also hopeful that he possibly makes the bench on the 20th for our first game back. So it's one of those, I don't expect him to be in the squad for the Liverpool game next week, but Palace on the 20th doesn't seem out of the question, because that does give Arsenal 3 weeks. And that still would have meant he wouldn't have made Ghana's squad, because their final game would have been 2 days later. But even at that, that may come too soon for Thomas Partey, and it could be that we don't actually see him in the Premier League until the Forest game, which is on the 30th of January. Again, look, Arsenal have been very, very patient with Thomas Partey here, so I think the club aren't going to take any risks. So if he's not on the bench on the 20th, I would say there's a high possibility we'll see him on the 30th, because there is an FA Cup game the following week after that. So the club won't want to take any risks. He is going to be crucial to our second half of the season, should we be able to get him fit. Now, it really is all doom and gloom. So we're hearing from Simon Collins at the Standard that Zinchenko is set for scan after fresh injury setback. The reports are that that's a calf injury. On average, a calf injury has tended to keep Zinchenko out for around 30 days, which isn't good news for Arsenal. He's very much the pantomime villain at the club right now. He is someone who has come in for a huge amount of flack with the Arsenal fan base, someone that I think gets a lot of undue criticism because he is someone that can do fantastic work for 89 minutes, make one mistake, and suddenly he is the worst player on the planet. So we saw against Fulham when he wasn't in the team what he brings. People will say your left back shouldn't be the player that progresses the ball like that. The reality is at Arsenal, that is how Arteta wants it to be. And until we have a better player than Zinchenko, he is the best we've got. And it's time we started backing him as a fan base because he's one of the reasons that our team was transformed 18 months ago. He was part of why we were able to go from fifth up to a title challenging team. And right now, the level of disrespect that this player is getting is it's very worrying. We're seeing the real toxic element of this fan base come back, and he is one that's really been kind of hit hard with the criticism. Can he do better? Of course he can. There's a lot of players in the side that can do a lot better than they are right now, and Zinchenko is certainly one of them. But the suggestions that he's a bang average player are completely ridiculous. We know where his lapses come. We know what he can work on, but we also know what he can bring. And if you're refusing to look at his qualities, you're completely blind to what we're doing, and you're also just in denial. That's the reality of it. But again, with the injury news, John Cross at the Mirror has reported that both Bukayo Saka and Ben White have been playing through injuries. So with Saka, it's this recurring Achilles injury. It's funny timing with this one. Saka's come in for a bit of criticism following his performances against West Ham and Fulham, and rightly so. Bukayo Saka is obviously the poster boy of the club. He's someone that we all love wholeheartedly. He's someone that we all have a lot of protectiveness towards because he's an academy kid. He is part of the reason that Arsenal went from where they were to where they are. But at the same time, Bukayo Saka is now on the big boy wages. He is now earning up there with some of the biggest players in the Premier League. And he has a massive contract at Arsenal, and that comes with massive responsibility. And the truth is, his performances at West Ham and Fulham weren't good enough. He got the goal at Fulham, but he missed three massive chances at West Ham. And that was a day when we needed our forwards to step up. Look, we had 30 chances. There's 30 shots in that game. We had a lot of big chances, and Saka and Jesus in particular are two players that have to come away with that game and really look hard at themselves and say, we should have done better. The same applied at Fulham when he put the ball over the bar from within the 6-yard area. And it does feel that sometimes when Saka goes through a poor patch, we hear about him playing through an injury. He doesn't look fully comfortable, and in the second half, he looked completely exhausted. But at the same time, Saka needs to figure these things out, as does Mikel Arteta. We can't just keep playing him and then excuse any poor bits of form with playing through an injury. But with Ben White, I think we have all heard over the last month from various different sources that he is playing through an injury. I have no doubt that that's true. If you look at Ben White athletically over the last 4 years, he has been a fantastic runner. He's been mobile, he's agile, all the qualities that have allowed him to go from centre back to right back and even playing midfield when he was at Leeds. He has looked completely uncomfortable. The minute he's had to turn, wingers have had the better of him. And that wasn't something that we saw last season. It was when he was defending one-on-one against the likes of Matoma and Rashford, he struggled. But overall, Ben White excelled in that position. If you look at him this year, the overlaps aren't as frequent as they were. When he gets the ball, he's a lot less adventurous. And whenever he's having to defend, he looks a bit lost. He's a player that looks like he needs the return of a Tomiyasu or someone to come into the side to let him drop out. So that's one I fully believe, and I think that we will probably hear more about in the coming weeks as people come back. But finally, and to wrap up, and thanks to the Arsenal Sphere for these great graphics, which I took off their Twitter. By the way, follow that account. It is fantastic for Arsenal news. Arsenal will be going to Dubai after the Liverpool game in the FA Cup for a mini sunshine break and some warm weather training. That's something that we have done for the last few years, probably going on 5 years now. And it's one that tends to give the squad a bit of a lift. It's probably something that we really need at this point, and hopefully it allows us to get a few of the players back that are out. But that's one of those that I think it also gives Arteta a chance to look at our build-up play, our attacking units, but also our form defensively, because whilst the attack has come under a lot of criticism, we've conceded 10 goals in December. So we've got a lot of work to do as a team. But the last update is from Sami Mokbel at the Daily Mail. Sami is someone who is actually fairly reliable for Arsenal news. He has said that Jurrien Timber is penciled in for March for a return. Now, we aren't clear if that's a return to training or a return to action. But either way, having been out for so long, I would expect a fairly rusty start to Timber's return. And we will be lucky to see him hit his best form at all this season. If anything, I would imagine he will be very, very slowly integrated into the group, and it'll be next season before we see him in action completely. But look, thank you to everyone that's joined the show today. We will leave it there, and we will be joining you again in the next few days. So please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and join us again for the 15-minute show on Friday. So thanks for joining. Have a great day. Thanks, guys.